Hey friends, welcome back to Daily Sews and Stuff. This is the third video in my series on pattern projecting. This video is about demystifying buying a projector. I'm going to talk to you about what you need when you go to buy your projector. So let me interrupt myself to say I have added to the description box in my last two videos and in this video affiliate links, or sometimes just links in general, to the patterns that I'm wearing. Today I'm wearing Ellie & Mac's Everyday Tee Relaxed on top, and Patterns for Pirates peg legs with the add-on, which gives me the side panels so I have pockets there, and the contour waistband with a pocket there. I love these pants. They're made with Supplex from Surge Fabric Shop, and this shirt is made with a character knit from Joann's. It's a cotton lycra. And it's a lot of fun too. It's Star Wars prints. The links in the description box will also include different things that we talk about today, as far as projectors and mounts and all those sorts of things we're going to get into. I'm part of affiliate programs with a few different companies, and so those links will be affiliate links. The rest of them will just be regular links because I still want to share with you even if I don't have an affiliate with that company. Affiliate links don't cost you any extra, but they give me a little extra sewing fund. So I'd appreciate if you use those links and we're able to purchase something if we talk about it today and you like it. Okay, so let me recap my last two videos. The first video, we learned about saving our patterns on Google Drive. That way they're available on our phone and our computer. In our second video, we learned about why pattern projecting and what makes me so excited about it and why I've decided to share this series with you and why I think you should get a projector and project your patterns too. In that video, I mentioned that you should go join a Facebook group called Projectors for Sewing. And I can only imagine that if you weren't already a part of that group, you went and you joined and immediately felt a sense of overwhelming, what do I do now? I don't know what to do. This is too many choices. I imagine that you felt that way because a few of you told me that you felt that way, and because I felt that way when I joined that group months ago. The group has only gotten bigger since then. It's only gotten more choices since then, so I can definitely see how it would be very overwhelming now. So my plan today is to demystify this a bit. I'm going to talk about some terms that are used on that board often. I'm going to talk about the different steps I think you need to go through when you are planning what your purchase will be. And I even printed myself out a few notes. To continue my story from last time, I joined the Projectors for Sewing group and was so excited because I already owned a projector. It was one that I used when I did presentations when I was teaching some trainings, and I thought, this is great. I have a projector, I'll just figure out a way to mount it. I won't need anything else. It didn't work out that way. One thing I didn't think about at the time, which is really important to think about when you're doing this, is the distance that you'll need from your cutting surface to your projector in order to get the size projection that you want. So my projector didn't end up working. And there were some people who were playing around with some workarounds, but it would have been a lot of work, and I would have had to enlist my husband's help for that, and I was impatient, and so I wanted to get started. So I began looking into other options. I began looking into purchasing a projector. But I also knew I don't really have much of a sewing budget. So I needed it to be something that was cost effective, and I needed it to be something that would work. I was feeling very overwhelmed with how many choices there were in that group. And after being in there a while, I've come to realize there are so many different choices in that group because we all have different needs, we all have different priorities, we all have different budgets. And so, while I would love to tell you, hey, this is the projector I have, this is the cord I use, this is the computer I use, this is the wireless mouse and keyboard I use, this is the mount I use, go buy those things, you'll be set. It really wouldn't be fair to you if I did that. Because my space and my needs are not the same as your space and your needs. So what I'm going to do instead is talk you through the thought process that I think you need to follow when you are looking for your projector. So what will you need to project your patterns? The first and most obvious thing you'll need is a projector. There are 3 or 4 types of projectors. I say 3 or 4 because some lines are a little blurry. You have that classic projector that has that lens at the front that you're very used to thinking of when you think of a projector, but often won't work for our purposes because of that long distance it will need between the lens and the cutting surface. There are some newer projectors that function in a lot of the same way, but are much smaller and use LED technology instead of LCD technology. And I'm grouping those together because those work in a very similar way. They often have the same needs for distance. We also have a short throw projector. Now, I'm not sure if this is a technical term in the projecting world or if it's just what we've coined in the Projectors for Sewing group, but when we say short throw projector, what we mean is a projector that functions in the same way as a traditional projector. It's got the lens on one side and is mounted traditionally to a wall, but that doesn't need much space between the lens and the cutting surface. For instance, mine right here looks and acts like a traditional projector, but it can only be mounted between 2 and 4 feet from the cutting surface. If you mount it further than 4 feet, it's going to have trouble focusing because it's not made to go from a long distance. Unlike the more traditional projectors that often need at least 4 feet, if not more, to be able to project a clear image. And then you have ultra short throw projectors, which, again, I'm not sure if this is a projector term or if we've just coined it in the group, but the ultra short throw projectors are made a little bit differently. They're made to mount directly to the wall on which they're projecting whenever they're used in a classroom or a business room setting. And the way they get used for projector sewing is they get set on their end on the table or maybe on a shelf right next to your table, very close to your table. They just don't need much room at all between their lens and the cutting surface. In fact, if you move them too far from the cutting surface, you're going to lose all your focus. The ultra short throws can be a really great option for you if you can't or don't want to mount your projector. It can also be a really good option for you if you want to get a really big cutting space, but you don't have much ceiling height. The second thing you will need is a computing device. And I say it like that to be really broad, because some people use their smartphone, some people use a tablet or an iPad, some people use Mac computers, some people use a desktop computer, some people use a Windows laptop. It just doesn't matter much as long as it's a device that is capable of interfacing with your projector. It is capable of opening a PDF. And that can be a pretty broad spectrum of devices. Really, this is going to depend on what you already own. If you are watching this on a device that you own, you already own something that can be used for projector sewing. But you need to know what kind of device you're using because it will affect the type of connections that you can make to your projector. So that's the next thing that you'll need, is a way to connect your computing device, whatever that is, to your projector. Now, this could be something like a cable. It's very simple, very inexpensive. You might already have one. If your computing device is very near to where you'll have your projector, or if you're able to purchase a long cord that you can tuck out of your way, that can be the best option. Cords tend to be more reliable than the wireless choices, and they tend to cause less technical difficulties when trying to connect your devices. However, you will be limited to the ports that your projector and your computer have. There are some ways around that. There are these things, and it's such a ridiculous name. They're called dongles, and they can help you convert one type of input to another. For instance, if my laptop only had an HDMI port, I could run a VGA cable from my projector to my laptop, where I would have a dongle that would accept the VGA cord and change it to a HDMI plug to go into my HDMI port on my computer. Another option for you might be wirelessly connecting your projector to your device. Especially if you're using a mobile device, that might be the way to go. There are also projectors that will connect via Wi-Fi or via Bluetooth, and there are ways to use things like Chromecast, Amazon Fire Stick, or Apple TV to wirelessly connect your projector to your computing device. The fourth thing that you'll most likely need is a mount. Now, before I talk about the different kinds of mounts, I just want to reemphasize that an ultra short throw projector does not need a mount. People do tend to either put them on a shelf that is very near their cutting surface, or to build up using some wooden blocks, or maybe some cardstock and cardboard, just to make sure that they get that tilt right, that they have it steady, because it's not designed necessarily to stand on its end like we're doing. But you will not need to buy a mount. That is something that you can make work with what you have at home. All other projectors will need some kind of mount to position them above your cutting surface and let you cut. You can affix these to your wall. You can affix them to your ceiling. Now, I want to make sure that we talk about this. If you buy one of the newer projectors with the LED technology from Amazon that are very small, you may not need a very beefy mount, and your projector itself doesn't weigh very much. But if you're buying an older projector, or if you're buying a larger projector, you really need to think about the weight of the projector and make sure your mount is made to handle that much weight. And you further need to think about the combined weight of the projector and the mount when you're putting that on your wall or on your ceiling. Ideally, you need to have a stud or a ceiling joist to screw at least a couple of your screws into. If that's not possible, you can use drywall anchors. I'll make sure that there's some in the description box that are really good. However, those do leave very big holes in your drywall, and it still isn't as steady as using a stud or a ceiling joist. However, the newer, smaller projectors with a small mount won't weigh as much, and they should be much more secure using just the drywall anchors. Some people in the Projectors for Sewing group have also made temporary or movable mounts. They've attached their projector to photography equipment and tripods and things like that. They've even done it with curtain rods and ladders. They've come up with a lot of different ways to temporarily mount their projector if they're, say, renting, or if they don't have a dedicated sewing space and they'll be moving around. The fifth and sixth things that you'll need is a cutting surface, a cutting mat, and a rotary cutter. Now, likely you already have those. Most sewists these days do. If you're still using scissors, you're going to want to consider changing to a mat and a rotary cutter if you're going to use a projector. Lifting the fabric up to use the scissors will distort your projection, and it really won't work out quite as well. The seventh and final thing that you might need is some sort of interfacing device to use with your computing device. And that was really purposefully very vague because I wanted to cover all my bases, but let me tell you what I'm really thinking about. If you're using a desktop, or if you're using a laptop that you keep somewhere far from your projector, then having something like a wireless mouse and keyboard will allow you to still communicate with your computer while you're not within arm's reach. If you're using a mobile device, that's probably not necessary because you'll be able to have your device with you. So what we need to focus on is getting the right projector for your needs that will connect with the device that you already have and plan to use, and then make sure that you get a way to connect those two. Once we figure that out, we can figure out a mount that will work for you, and then you should be set. Now you might be saying, that's all very well and good, but how do I choose the projector that's right for me? There's too many choices. So let's help narrow it down here. There are a few different priorities you might have that will narrow down your options. The first one, and the most important for me, which it may or may not be for you, is cost. This was a brand new idea for me, and I didn't have a lot of money to invest in it, but even if I had, I probably wouldn't want to invest a lot of money in something that is brand new and I'm not sure if I will like or not. You can help offset your costs by buying a used projector. I bought mine used off eBay. As far as I can tell, it was in a classroom before. It was $20-something for the projector and $20-something for shipping. All in, it was right at $51. I thought that was a great deal. Something to think about though, if you're buying your projector used, is whether or not it comes with the power cord. Most of the time, those are easily found. They're just general electronic power cords with the 3 prongs. But that is another expense if it doesn't come with one. Another thing to think about is if it comes with a remote. If you're going to mount it very high, you don't want to have to climb to push the buttons every time. And even if you're going to mount it lower, it's nice to have the remote whenever you're calibrating and setting up. And it's also really nice to have the remote to not have to touch it. One of the most important things to think about when you're buying used is lamp life. Now, the lamp is the light bulb, basically, in your projector. And they all have a shelf life. So you want to look at how many hours it's been used and how many more hours it has left in it. Generally, you can find out how many hours it has total in it by searching for the manual online. Almost all manuals are available online these days. And you can just Google the model of the projector and find that available for free. One caution here is that older projectors, and really all projectors, are designed to be hung horizontally. And we are hanging ours vertically, so that it's projecting straight down onto a horizontal surface. There has been some discussion in the Projectors for Sewing group about whether or not that shortens the lamp life. Some people have had some issues that may or may not be related to the vertical mounting, and there's been a lot of discussion about how that affects the cooling, because the cooling of the lamp greatly affects its shelf life. One thing I liked about the projector that I ended up buying is that it has a really good cooling system. So that might be something that you think about. And certainly, anything you do here is at your own risk. You can also help offset your costs by buying a projector on Amazon that's easily returned if you need to. And you can help make sure that you're staying within your budget by making sure that you know ahead of time if this projector is going to work in your space. And that brings me to my second point. The distance between the lens of your projector and your cutting surface is very important. And I'm not saying that you need to figure out that exact distance right this minute, but you do need a really good general idea. The best thing to do is to measure from your cutting surface to your ceiling, or perhaps from your ceiling to your cutting surface, and subtract a good foot or so for your mount and projector. What you're left with is the distance that would be from the lens of a projector at the highest level to your cutting surface. You can take that and you can visit a website that I'll link in the description box that is dedicated to calculating throws. The throw takes into account the distance between the lens of the projector and the surface it's projected onto, and how big a projection it can make with that distance. All projectors have parameters of their minimum distance and maximum distance. So right there, that narrows down a lot of your choices. Add to that the throw size, which is the third thing that you want to think about. The throw size is how big of an area you'll have to work with. How big does it actually project? That is always relative to how far it is from your cutting surface. So you go to that website and you can choose which projector you want to explore, and then you can mess with the settings, moving the projector further and closer, making the throw bigger and smaller, to figure out if that projector will work for you. Not every single projector is on there, but most of them are. Epson has its own throw calculator on its website, which I'll also link. That's where I figured out if my projector would work for me, because it wasn't listed on the overall site. So once you've figured out how much space you have and how big a projection you want within that space, you figure out which projectors will fit that bill. And then within those choices, you figure out which one is within your budget. Some other things that might be a priority for you is having a temporary or movable setup. If you're renting, or if you don't have a dedicated sewing space, or if you're just not willing to put any holes in your walls for this thing that you may or may not like, that is something you need to truly consider. If you really want a temporary setup, you're going to need to buy one of those newer, smaller projectors that are available places like Amazon. I'll post some of the more popular ones in our group down below. Another thing that wasn't much of a deciding factor for me, but maybe for you, is do you want to have cords or be cordless? In my experience, using a cord gives you fewer issues with resolution differences and gives you fewer issues with disconnection. So for me, it made the most sense to use a cord. For you, it may be different. If you really, really want to be cordless, you might also think about getting a projector that uses a battery rather than a cord. That may also be a consideration if you don't have a lot of plugs available where you sew. A couple other things that may or may not matter are resolution and lumens. Resolution has to do with how crisp an image that you can get. The higher the resolution, the nicer the projection will look, even at bigger sizes. However, you also have to have it kind of mesh with whatever you're using to send your picture to your projector. A good way around that is if you extend your desktop rather than mirror your desktop. This is available on some mobile devices, not all, but is always available on your laptops and desktops. The objections to this is that you won't have the file open on both your monitor and your projector. It will only be open on one or the other. It's sometimes difficult to read the words that are projected. Mostly what we're wanting to project is just lines. You don't need a super high resolution to see the outline of your pattern. However, if you want to be able to read the words, you might need a little bit better resolution. Different pattern companies play nicer with the projector than others. So that may be an issue too. One thing you can do is to use Adobe to open the file on the side of your desktop that will be your projector, and to use an internet browser to open the PDF on your monitor, and that way it's open in two separate places and you'll still be able to see what you need to see on your monitor. For me, I haven't had a huge issue with this. Oftentimes what I'll just do is take a sheet of paper and lay it on top of whatever I'm cutting, and then I'll be able to read the words, or at least make out mostly what they say. And then lumens is kind of an iffy term anyways. We're not always exactly sure what it means because manufacturers seem to be able to throw out whatever number they want to and it fits into that lumens category that doesn't seem relative to other projectors and their lumens. Theoretically, what it means is how bright it is. And the brighter your projector, then the less ambient light will affect your projection. Really hard to trust the advertisements for the projectors, especially the newer ones that are on LED technology rather than the LCD technology. Personally, I didn't find lumens to be a very important factor in my decision making, but it may be for you. Okay, so you've thought through all those priorities we just discussed, and you have narrowed down your choices based on your space limitations and the throw size you want and the budget limitations you may have, and you've thought about those other things I mentioned, and you've chosen your projector, and you already have your computing device that you're prepared to use to connect to that projector. Now what you need to buy is a way to connect those two. I mentioned earlier about cords and dongles and wireless options such as a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth enabled projector or the different HDMI devices like Chromecast, Fire TV, Apple TV. You've got your projector, you've got your computing device that you already had, you've got a way to connect the two. If you are buying an ultra short throw, you're done. If you're buying a short throw or a more traditional projector, you now need to buy the mounts. And as we discussed, it's important to think about if you want to have a permanent mount or a temporary mount. It's important to think about things like where your studs and ceiling joists are and to have some drywall anchors on hand. And if you're wanting to have a more temporary mount, it's important to know how your projector will connect to those mounts and what will work for you in your space. So now you've bought your projector, you have your computing device, You've bought your connection, you've bought your mounts, you already have a cutting surface, and you already have a rotary cutter. You may or may not need to get a wireless mouse and keyboard. Now's the time to do it if you need it. Now what? Now you wait for delivery. Once your projector comes in, you'll want to test its function. Put it on a horizontal surface and project against a wall. Make sure that it's all working the way you want it to. Play with the settings so you're familiar with them, and definitely find that factory reset so we can start over in a little while. Stay tuned for videos 3 and 4 to learn how to mount and calibrate your projector so that you'll finally be able to start pattern projecting. I can't wait till we get here. Here's my 5-year-old.
Thanks for watching my videos. Like, subscribe, and comment.